with thinly veiled judgment. Each day, he faced new notices on his door, small annoyances meant to provoke and unnerve him, non-compliance with lawn trimming, trash can violations, and more. Each infraction, absurd as they were, chipped away at Jack's sense of security. And then came the harshest blow. One evening, after another exhausting day, Jack arrived home to find his mailbox stuffed more than usual. Ripping it open, he felt the unmistakable weight of another notice clutched within. This one was different, starker, more official. As he read the letter, fury ignited within him. The HOA was launching proceedings to levy fines against him for continued disregard of community standards. They claimed Maverick's presence was disruptive, and they demanded proof of identification for him as a service animal. The words blurred as anger bubbled over, a firestorm brewing within. Jack knew he couldn't back down. He had to stand firm not just for himself, but for Maverick, who deserved to be treated with dignity and respect. "What are we going to do?" Jack muttered, angling his gaze toward Maverick, who simply lay there, trust radiating from him. "We're taking this fight to the top," Jack resolved, feeling fire as a possibility roaring within him. He enlisted the neighbors who had stood with him at the last meeting, and together they quickly gathered a small army of signatures advocating for the rights of service animals, specifically Maverick. Underneath the protective cover of the night, the residents rallied at Jack's home. They shared tea, exchanged stories, and united against the oppressive weight of Karen's reign. The energy in the room crackled with anticipation. Just when things seemed to be coming together, a knock disrupted their hopeful gathering. Jack opened the door to find Karen standing there, hands on her hips, unmistakably undaunted by the throng in his living room. "I heard noise coming from here." "What's happening, Jack?" she challenged, eyes narrowing as she surveyed the scene. "Just a gathering of friends," Jack shot back, matching her intensity. "Conversations about community standards. You know, something you're very familiar with." Karen's gaze simmered with annoyance and condescension. "You can't make a mockery of the very rules you wish to break. I will make sure you regret stepping out of line, Jack." A silence enveloped the group, betrayal crackling like static between them. Jack glanced at Maverick, feeling a sudden rush of fear and anger, a dangerous combination. Now was not the time to falter. "Say what you will, Karen," Jack replied with conviction. "But we're not backing down, and your threats won't intimidate us any longer." With that, Jack retreated, closing the door firmly as a wave of determination surged through him. The meeting was approaching, and the stakes had never felt higher. They wouldn't just be fighting for their community, they would be reclaiming it from Karen's iron grip. Plans were finalized, strategies discussed, and with each neighbor's pledge of support, Jack's confidence solidified. He felt an unbreakable bond forming, stronger than he could have ever anticipated. As the meeting space filled with residents, Jack led the charge, flanked by Maverick, who exuded unwavering support. Maverick raised his head, eyes gleaming with a shared resolve. Jack knew this was a fight worth having, and no matter what, they would face it together. The power of the community finding its voice, awakening against its oppressor, was about to transform the very fabric of Sunnyside Estates. And as Jack cast a determined glance at the expectant faces before him, he couldn't help but feel hope blooming in the most unexpected of places. The tide was turning, and nothing would be the same again. The power of a community finding its voice, awakening against its oppressor, was about to transform the very fabric of Sunnyside Estates. As Jack cast a determined glance at the expectant faces before him, he realized the moment had arrived. He straightened his spine and took a deep breath, the air thick with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. Maverick was by his side, steady and loyal, sensing the urgency in Jack's demeanor. "Thank you all for coming," Jack began, his voice slicing through the murmur of hushed conversations. He could feel the weight of his neighbors' eyes, their hopes resting on his shoulders. "Today, we stand not just for ourselves, but for every resident who has felt silenced by intimidation." Karen, seated at the front, shifted in her chair, her expression darkening. Her plans to exert control were crumbling before her eyes, and the look in her gaze spoke volumes. Jack saw the flicker of fury dance behind her composed facade. "We're here to support each other," he continued, passion igniting his words. "This isn't just about a service dog or community standards. This is about our right to live in peace without fear of confrontation or retaliation. We will not be bullied." A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd, a shared energy washing over them, igniting a sense of rebellion that had long been subdued. One neighbor, a former teacher named Elaine, stood up. "Jack's right. We've let her intimidate us for too long. It's time we take back our voices." The room buzzed with agreement, but before Jack could respond, Karen interjected sharply. "You think this is about a dog? It's about respect. We have rules for a reason." Her voice dripped with venom, but Jack could see the cracks forming. Her power was slipping, and Jack felt emboldened. "Respect goes both ways, Karen," he countered, cutting her off with a confidence he didn't entirely feel. "You can't silence us by exploiting your position. We're a community, not your dictatorship." The tension in the air was palpable, charged like a thunderstorm ready to unleash its fury. Jack glanced at Maverick, who sat attentively, nuzzling against him as if offering silent support. Jack drew strength from their bond, a reminder that vulnerable moments could also forge unbreakable connections. A neighbor rose, his voice quaking but determined. "I've witnessed Karen manipulate us through fear. She's threatened me about my garden, my decorations, while she lets her own yard go wild. This is about fairness." The room erupted into murmurs of support, and Jack's heart pounded in his chest. "Let's talk about fairness," Karen sneered, her words dripping with disdain. "You want to take a stand? Fine. I'll make sure everyone knows the repercussions of defiance. You'll regret this meeting." Her eyes darted around the room, seeking to instill panic, but all she found were faces hardened with resolve. "Enough!" Jack's voice rose above the clamor, commanding attention, stalwart and unwavering. "We're prepared to fight for what's right, and we're doing it together. If you want to play games, then let's play. This community deserves better than manipulation and deceit." Jack Turner had always believed in fighting for what was right. But standing outside his home in Sunnyside Estates, it felt more like a war zone than a peaceful neighborhood. The sun hung high in the sky, illuminating Maverick, his loyal golden retriever service dog, who sat resolutely at his side. Today was the day Jack would face Karen Whitfield, the HOA president, who still seemed to view him as an outsider in their tightly knit community. But today would be different. As Jack glanced at Maverick, he felt a surge of determination wash over him. Maverick had been his anchor since his military service, helping him navigate the choppy waters of PTSD. The two shared an unbreakable bond forged in crisis and compassion, and now Jack felt that bond steeling his resolve in the face of an upcoming confrontation. Maverick tilted his head, seeming to sense the rising tide of Jack's emotions. With the crispness of the late summer air electrically charged around them, Jack braced himself for the inevitable showdown at the board meeting. Karen's intentions loomed over him like storm clouds threatening to unleash a torrent of rain. He could feel the tension in the neighborhood. It hung heavy, whispering among the residents like a secret collective anxiety. Jack knew it was coming. Karen had made no secret of her disdain for anyone she felt didn't belong, and today was his day to challenge that. He had heard the murmurs, talk of her plans to impose stricter rules on pet ownership, and her contempt for anyone who dared to oppose her. "Ready, buddy," Jack muttered, crouching to rub the back of Maverick's ears. His faithful companion let out a low, reassuring bark, the golden retriever's warm presence fortifying Jack's confidence. He stood tall, shoulders squared, as he headed toward the community center where the board meeting would take place. Each step felt like marching into a battleground, and with every ounce of determination, he shook off the nerves that threatened to bubble up. The soft thud of Maverick's paws beside him was a steady reminder that he was not alone in this fight. As he entered the room filled with disgruntled neighbors, Jack spotted Karen at the front, clipboard in hand, and a condescending smile plastered across her face. The scent of stale coffee mixed with the muted murmurs of uncertainty hung in the air. Jack's heart raced as he surveyed the audience. Many faces were familiar, yet he recognized that beneath their polite smiles lay a tapestry of fear woven tightly by the harpy that was Karen Whitfield. "Ladies and gentlemen," Karen began, her voice dripping with sugary authority, "as you all know, we need to maintain the standards of our community. That includes a new registration policy for all pets." Jack's heart raced as he raised his hand, ready to speak. The hushed conversations around him seemed to swell in volume as Karen's gaze flickered toward him, a predator sensing the first sign of defiance. He could feel the weight of her scrutiny, the undercurrent of her disapproval sinking deeper into his resolve. But as he continued her droning speech, a sly glimmer danced in Karen's eyes. She paused, smirking slightly, as if relishing the control she had over everyone, especially Jack. Now, if there are any service animals, like some unfortunate trooper who brought a dog that has no proper identification, her voice trailed off, laced with sarcasm. Jack clenched his jaw, refusing to let her barbs pierce him. "Excuse me, Karen," he spoke up, trying to keep his voice steady despite the simmering anger boiling within him. Maverick is a certified service dog, and the Americans with Disabilities Act clearly states that he doesn't require any additional identification. The ripples of murmur swelled again, but Karen's scowl deepened in response. With a flick of her pen, she marked something on her clipboard, her demeanor shifting to one of barely concealed disdain. "Those are wonderful asterisk laws, Jack, but they don't apply to community standards. We have rules for a reason," she shot back, her voice cutting through the air like glass. Jack felt frustration spiking through his veins, a sense of indignation mixing with a heartache of his past experiences. Around him, the once silent neighbors shifted uncomfortably in their seats, eyes darting between him and Karen. People who had been frightened into silence suddenly found their voices, but no one dared to step into the line of fire directly. Maverick shifted beside him, and Jack steadied himself. "The law doesn't care about your personal standards," he shot back, feeling the weight of the moment slip into a void of unimaginable tension. In that instant, Karen's eyes narrowed further, and Jack realized that her walls were thick, fortified by an unwavering belief in her own superiority. She thrived on control, and here he was, the declared enemy at her gates. The debate intensified, and while Jack felt a swell of support, he also sensed an undercurrent of fear in the room. It wasn't just him under Karen's thumb. Many neighbors nodded subtly, their eyes wide, afraid to challenge the status quo. Jack took a breath, words swirling in his mind, his heart racing with frustration and resolve. After what felt like an eternity, the meeting concluded, and as neighbors moved to exit, Karen's hand brushed against Jack's arm, her voice low and threatening. "If you want to be difficult, Jack Turner, I can be much more difficult," she whispered, a tone that sent a chill down his spine. Jack's pulse quickened. In that moment, he knew he was in for more than he had bargained for. This wasn't just a disagreement over rules. There was something deeply personal about her animosity. A storm was brewing, and he was right in its path. But he was ready. He had to be. "Watch yourself," he said firmly, feeling the heat of the moment. As the room emptied, Jack exchanged glances with Maverick, who watched him intently, a silent partner in the ever-intensifying battle ahead. He could feel Maverick's calm presence tethering him, a sense of stability grounding him amidst the swirling chaos. Deep down, and perhaps in part thanks to Maverick, Jack left that meeting with a flicker of hope clasped within his heart. But he knew this fight was far from over. Little did he anticipate that the battle would escalate far beyond their verbal clashes, spiraling toward a confrontation neither he nor Maverick would forget. As he walked down the street toward his home, the warm evening air was thick with unresolved tension. Jack replayed the meeting in his mind, feeling anger swell within him like a vortex. The indignation he'd felt during the confrontation with Karen lingered, but it was laced with a growing determination to not let her win. Once inside, he sank onto the couch, Maverick settling beside him. Jack wrapped his arms around the golden retriever, breathing in the comfort that only Maverick could provide. "I'm going to need you, buddy," he whispered, scratching behind Maverick's ears. "This is just the beginning." Maverick responded by nudging Jack's hand with his nose, his gaze as steady as ever, and Jack knew he wasn't alone in this fight. The bloodshed of words was about to turn into something more tangible. As Jack prepared himself for the inevitable war that would come, he couldn't shake the feeling that the greatest twists were yet to unfold. The following days were turbulent. Whispers of Karen's threat spread through the community like wildfire. Every time Jack left his home, he felt eyes watching him, some filled with sympathy, others. As he spoke, an unexpected twist surged through the crowd. A young mother, who had sat quietly in the back, suddenly stood up. Her voice trembled, but there was fire behind her words. "My son is autistic," she confessed, eyes brimming with tears. "Maverick is the emotional support he needs." We can't keep allowing people like Karen to decide who belongs and who doesn't. The crowd erupted in applause, a swell of solidarity warming the air. Jack glanced at Karen, who looked like a wild animal backed into a corner. It was clear that she hadn't anticipated such an uprising. "Thank you for sharing," Jack said softly, signaling for calm. "We aren't alone in this fight. Each one of us has a reason to support the other. All it takes is courage to see the truth. Will you stand with us?" One by one, neighbors began standing, raising hands in solidarity. Faces filled with determination replaced expressions of fear. Jack's heart raced. This was becoming something bigger than himself. It was a movement. "Karen," he said steadily, turning back to her, "you need to understand that we're not just your neighbors. We're not just people you can control. We're a family here, and we care about each other." The falter in Karen's expression was fleeting, but Jack noticed it. An ember of doubt flickered in her eyes amidst the chaos. "You think you can win this," she hissed, her facade cracking. "You don't know who you're dealing with." "Actually, we do," replied Elaine firmly, taking a step forward. "We know you've hidden behind rules, but you can't hide from the truth. This community is our right, not yours to commandeer." Karen clenched her jaw, her face twisting into a mask of fury. "This isn't over, Jack. You'll regret crossing me," she spat, her voice icy and unyielding. With that, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Silence settled over the room, like the calm after a storm. The realization of what they had done began to sink in, the tension of combat hanging heavily in the air. Jack looked around at his neighbors, their faces slowly shifting from apprehension to fervor. They had stepped into the dark abyss of confrontation together, and now was the time to embrace it. "We need to stick together," Jack said, his voice filling the room with renewed vigor. "We can't allow this to end here. Let's gather more support. We'll stand up at the next HOA meeting with a united front, signatures, support, and proof of our rights. We'll show them we're stronger together." Cheers erupted as neighbors began to chatter, excitement blooming like wildflowers in the cracks of the pavement. Jack felt a warmth swell within. This was just the beginning of an unseen battle, and it was one he was no longer fighting alone. As they each voiced their willingness to contribute something, petitions, invoices, emotional testimonies, they all embraced a unified purpose. The wheels were set in motion now, and Jack could feel the power of community beginning to churn. In the days that followed, whispers of their rallying cry began to spread beyond confines of Jack's home, reaching those fearful of standing up to Karen in the past. Every door knocked on, every story shared across the community knitted them closer together. Maverick took pride of place as an unofficial mascot of their burgeoning revolution, a symbol of courage steering them toward an uncertain future. But amid that surge of hope lurked a menacing shadow. Jack could feel Karen's presence looming. She would not take this lying down. As more residents joined their cause and petitions swelled, Jack knew she would strike back with force. Her threats echoed in his mind like an imminent storm. But now, it was his turn to fight for his home, his neighbors, and Maverick by his side. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together," he promised Maverick, who looked up at him with unwavering trust. The unseen battle was escalating, and Jack was prepared to lead his community into it head first, ready for whatever twists and challenges confronted them along the way. In the days that followed, a palpable shift swept through Sunnyside Estates. Jack could feel the community's momentum building, an undercurrent of determination channeling through the streets. But alongside that hope lurked a menacing shadow. Karen was simmering. He knew she would retaliate, and a threat still echoed ominously in his mind. Jack spent evenings strategizing with his neighbors, plotting their next steps like military generals preparing for a crucial battle. They gathered in living rooms, porches, and backyards, forming bonds that had been absent for far too long. Every face brought stories of fear but also of resilience. Jack listened intently, and with each shared experience, his conviction grew stronger. One evening, while poring over the responses gathered from their petition, Jack received a text from Elaine. "We need to meet ASAP." His heart raced. What could be so urgent? He quickly replied, arranging to meet her at the community center. When Jack arrived, the air was thick with tension. Elaine, along with a few other residents, gathered hand in hand, their faces drawn with worry. "We've got a problem," she said, her voice low and urgent. Karen just sent notices to all the residents who signed our petition. She's threatening retaliation, fines, community service, whatever she can dream up. A wave of dread washed over Jack. She's trying to scare us into backing down. Elaine nodded gravely. If we don't act quickly, everyone might back down. We need a plan. The tension crackled like static electricity in the air. We can't let her intimidate us, Jack said firmly. We have to expose her tactics. We need to take this to the public. The room buzzed with a newfound energy. What if we document everything? Suggested Alex, one of the younger residents. Record meetings, gather stories, show everyone what Karen's really doing. Brilliant, Jack replied, a flame reigniting within him. We can show how she manipulates the rules and people. Let's get our story out. Post on social media. Contact local news stations. Let's spread her fear back onto her. The group felt invigorated. They spent the next hour brainstorming and planning. Meanwhile, Jack's mind raced. He felt the palpable weight of their mission, knowing it could either embolden them or lead to Karen's wrath. The following days turned into an exhilarating whirlwind of activity. They created a social media page dedicated to community support and shared their personal encounters with Karen. Videos surfaced documenting her threats and scornful manipulations. At the same time, Jack reached out to local reporters, sharing their story. He crafted an email that outlined their struggle against Karen's reign of fear. Within days, the story garnered attention, drawing in curious eyes. But just as things began to take off, it happened. Their worst fear materialized. Jack received a call from a local reporter just before a press meeting with the community. Karen's already retaliated. She's mobilized supporters of her own, claiming your group is spreading false narratives. You've got to be prepared for blowback. Jack's heart sank. Time was running out. They needed to act quickly. Together with Elaine and the others, they decided to host a public forum, an open invitation for discussion about community policies and their rights. On the night of the forum, nerves coursed through Jack's veins as residents filed into the community center. Maverick sat calm by his side, providing a necessary anchor amid the chaos around him. As the crowd grew, Jack felt a swell of purpose. But just as he was beginning to find his footing, the tension escalated. Karen burst into the room, flanked by a handful of her supporters, who shot glares at Jack and his crew. "So you think you can undermine my authority?" she spat, using the tone of a creature cornered but unwilling to acknowledge defeat. Jack straightened, unwilling to back down. "We're not here to undermine anyone, Karen. We're here for everyone's right to feel safe in their own neighborhood." As a heated exchange unfolded, the crowd erupted with opposing shouts, a chaotic cacophony that echoed within the austere walls of the community center. Jack caught sight of familiar faces, a mix of defenders and opponents, uncertainty rippling in the air. "Let's hear from both sides." Elaine shouted, trying to bring order to the chaotic spectacle. Karen took the floor, delivering a fierce diatribe about community standards and personal responsibility. "These people want to destroy the community I've worked hard to build," she declared, pointing at Jack. "They want to tear us apart." Jack knew he had to act fast. He had documented a slew of Karen's transgressions, replete with evidence, a clip from their last meeting, showing her undermining service animals, and others voicing their complaint against her reign of fear. "Enough?" Jack interrupted, his voice steady and powerful. "It's time we talk about fairness, Karen." He moved to the front of the room and pulled up a projector displaying their documented evidence, revealing the cracks beneath her carefully maintained facade. Gasps filled the room as the realities of Karen's manipulations came to light. Jack saw a mixture of disbelief and anger on the faces of his neighbors, the courage to reclaim their community starting to seep through the cracks where fear once held dominance. "With your actions, Karen, you've fostered fear, but what you've truly done is ignite a desire for change," Jack proclaimed, glancing toward the audience. "People want to reclaim their power, and that starts today." The atmosphere shifted. Residents began murmuring in agreement, some expressing anger at being used as pawns in Karen's game. The tide was turning. Everyone, we deserve a community built on respect and understanding, not fear and intimidation. Jack said, the emotion welling up within him. "Let's work together to establish guidelines that protect everyone's rights, including service animals." Let's build a home for all of us, not just for those who weigh their power over others. The crowd erupted in applause, a unified roar against the injustices they had suffered. Karen, now visibly agitated, attempted to regain control over the situation. "This isn't over," she shouted, her voice cracking with frustration as she stormed out of the room. But it was too late. The mood had shifted irrevocably. Everyone could feel it. They were no longer living in a shadow. They were stepping into the light, reclaiming their lives and their community. As the applause echoed around him, Jack turned to Elaine and the others, surprise and joy in their eyes. This was just the beginning. They had taken a stand. They had a voice. Maverick, sensing the change, wagged his tail enthusiastically, his joyful energy filling the room as if he was celebrating their victory. Jack patted him affectionately, gratitude swelling in his heart. The ensuing weeks were nothing short of transformative. The heightened awareness of the neighborhood propelled them toward action, recycling their energy into creating a new community standard, one that embraced inclusion over exclusion, compassion over control. As time passed, Jack watched as the neighborhood bloomed. They instituted monthly meetings, bringing everyone together, ensuring that every voice was heard and every concern was addressed. The oppressive reign of fear began to dissipate, replaced by a collective approach to community living, one founded on mutual respect. It wasn't long before Karen's influence started to fade. She lost her grip as her once loyal supporters slowly saw through her facade. Those who had once been too frightened to speak began rising, forming a chorus advocating for change. Finally, the community came together for a grand celebration of unity, a culmination of all their efforts. Jack stood proud, flanked by supportive neighbors as Maverick enjoyed the festivities, mingling with children and accepting treats. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden light over the gathering, Jack took a moment to reflect. He had faced an unseen battle, one that had tested his resolve and loyalty to his community. Yet, in doing so, he had uncovered something profound, the strength that comes from unity. "Thank you," Jack said into the microphone, the sincerity of his words draping a hush over the joyful crowd. "Thank you for standing up and standing strong. We've created a community, not just for ourselves, but for those who come after us. Let's continue to keep the doors to kindness, understanding, and support wide open." Applause erupted, echoing through the air. In that moment, Jack knew they had truly triumphed, weaving the threads of resilience into the very fabric of their community. Together, they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. Sunnyside Estates wasn't just a neighborhood anymore. It had become a sanctuary of hope and strength, where people were willing to stand together, fight for one another, and cherish what true community really meant. Jack smiled, feeling the weight of the world lift from his shoulders, his heart swelling with pride. They had faced a storm, and now they were free.